If you've ever thought, I keep the feeder full, I clean it, I try not to scare them, so why do they still swoop in, grab one seed, hesitate, squabble, or vanish the second I step outside? You're not alone. Most backyard bird lovers hit that moment. We start wondering if the food is wrong, if the birds are nervous, if we've done something to break their trust. And right in the middle of those little dramas, there's a tiny move most people never notice at all. A quick swipe of the beak on a branch, a rub on the railing, one sharp drag along the feeder perch. It looks like nothing, just a crumb wipe. But that tiny beak wipe can tell you a surprising amount about how a bird is experiencing your garden. Today, I want to show you what that movement usually means, why it shows up around feeding so often, when it's completely normal, and when it's worth paying closer attention. Because once you understand that little wipe, you stop reading birds as random or ungrateful, and you start seeing the real picture. A wild animal managing food, danger, memory, and trust in a space you've helped shape. And that means you can make your yard or balcony feel safer, calmer, and easier for birds to use. The obvious explanation is not wrong. A bird eats. Its beak gets messy. It wipes the mess off. Fair enough. That is often part of the story. If a robin has berry juice on its bill, if a titmouse has been cracking sunflower seeds, if a woodpecker has just worked through suet, cleaning matters. Ornithologists describe bill wiping as a common maintenance behavior, especially after feeding. But the reason it matters is bigger than tidiness. For a bird, the beak is not just a mouth. It is fingers, tool, probe, food processor, and in some situations, even defense. Birds handle seeds with it, strip insects with it, preen with it, test surfaces with it, carry nesting material with it, and in many species, use it with remarkable precision. So when a bird wipes its beak, it may be removing seed dust, fruit pulp, grease, husk fragments, or anything else that interferes with that tool working cleanly. That sounds simple, but here's the backyard translation. If you start noticing more beak wiping after a certain food goes out, don't jump first to, they hate it. Sometimes, the bird is just dealing with texture, soft fruit smears, wet seed clumps, melting suet coats. Even harmless residue can change how comfortable the bill feels. So, one very practical lesson from this behavior is to pay attention to food condition, not just food type. If seed is damp, moldy, or clumped, if fruit is fermenting, if suet is going slick in heat, remove it. A little extra wiping after messy food is normal. A sudden increase after spoiled or wet food is a clue. And clean the surfaces around the feeder too. Birds often use the same rail, branch, hook, or fence top as a wipe station. If those surfaces stay coated in old food, droppings, or residue, you're not just seeing normal behavior anymore. You may be creating a dirtier feeding environment than you realize. But the most interesting part of the beak wipe is often not the wipe itself. It's where it happens, and what happens before and after. Watch a chickadee, a titmouse, or a nuthatch at a feeder. Very often, it does not sit there calmly and eat like a relaxed guest at a table. It grabs food and leaves, sometimes in less than a second. It lands, takes a seed, flies to a nearby perch, works the food, swallows, wipes the beak, and then freezes to scan. That whole sequence is packed with survival logic. Behavioral ecologists like Stephen Lima have spent decades showing how small birds live inside a constant trade-off between food and safety. Every second spent feeding is also a second spent exposed. A feeder is rich in calories, but it can also be one of the most dangerous places in a yard because it concentrates birds in the open and creates predictable traffic. So, a bird that grabs one seed and retreats is not necessarily wary of you in a personal sense, and it's not being picky or rude. It is doing efficient risk management. That tiny beak wipe often happens at the exact point where feeding ends and vigilance begins again. That is a huge reframe. The bird is not fussing. It is closing one task and returning to survival. So if birds in your yard keep flying in like tiny burglars, don't read that as failure. Read it as information. Your feeder may be useful, but exposed. The answer is often not more food. It's a better setup around the food. What helps most is giving birds a safe processing zone. A nearby branch, a small tree, a sturdy natural perch, or even a well-placed balcony branch can make a dramatic difference, because birds need somewhere to take food, handle it, wipe, and scan. But there's an important balance here. Nearby cover is helpful. Cover that doubles as a predator ambush point is not. A feeder stranded in open space can make birds nervy. A feeder jammed right against dense hiding cover can become dangerous, especially where cats are present. Aim for nearby retreat options with good sight lines, not a trap. And if you have outdoor cats in the area, even your own, this matters more than almost anything else. A bird that rushes in, grabs food, and wipes on the nearest branch may already be feeding under predator pressure. Keep cats indoors, especially around feeding spaces. A calm garden feels different to a bird than a hunted one. There's another layer hidden in the beak wipe: memory. If you watch closely, many birds use the same white perch over and over, the same twig, the same hook, the same fence wire. That isn't random. Research on food caching birds like chickadees and jays has shown just how strong bird spatial memory can be. Birds build detailed maps of routes, shelter, food locations, danger zones, and reliable perches. Even species that aren't famous for cache memory still learn the geometry of a space very quickly. So when a bird repeatedly takes food to the same spot, wipes there, and scans from there, you are often seeing a practiced route: feeder, retreat, process, wipe, check the world, move on. That sequence is part of the bird's trust in the space, which means one small human change can matter more than we expect. Move the feeder suddenly. Prune the branch they've been using. Add a shiny object near the flight path. Rearrange balcony furniture. Leave a reflective window panel exposed where there wasn't one before. To us, it may feel trivial. To the bird, the map has changed. The safe line in and out is not the same anymore. So if birds seem to suddenly stop trusting a feeder after you've cleaned up, redecorated, trimmed plants, or moved things around, don't assume the birds are fickle. They may simply be relearning the route. Consistency helps. If you need to make changes, smaller gradual shifts are often easier for birds to adapt to than one dramatic reset. This also helps explain something people take personally all the time. A bird can visit your feeder for weeks and still fly away the instant you appear at the window or step onto the balcony. That does not mean it has forgotten the food source or rejected the space. Birds can remember a location and still keep a healthy distance from movement near it. Trust is not the same as tameness. Wild birds do not need to become comfortable with us at close range for a feeding space to be useful. They just need the risk to stay manageable and predictable. Now add social tension, and the story changes again. Some feeder setups are calm, others are full of politics. One dominant bird claims the best perch. Smaller birds wait at the edges. Finches jostle. Sparrows rush the tray. In those cases, watch the pattern around the beak wipe. If birds are snatching food, wiping quickly, and immediately darting off because another bird is pressuring the space, the issue may not be the food or your presence at all. It may be competition. This is especially common when one feeder becomes the only usable feeding point. Lower-ranking birds often get pushed into shorter, more stressful visits. The bird that looks hesitant may simply be trying to avoid conflict. The bird that appears to dislike the feeder may dislike the crowd. The practical fix is not complicated, but it does need intention. If you regularly see chasing, queuing, or birds feeding only in rushed bursts, give them options. 2 smaller feeders spaced apart are often better than one crowded one. If possible, place them so a dominant bird cannot visually control both at once. Different heights can help too. The goal is not to eliminate natural hierarchy. Wild birds will always negotiate access. The goal is to lower unnecessary pressure so more birds can feed without turning every visit into a sprint. And then there's seasonality, which quietly changes the meaning of everything. In winter, a bird may be feeding with much tighter energy margins. In spring, adults may be collecting food on a strict schedule. In summer, shade and heat can shift visiting times. In berry season, bills get stained and sticky. Juveniles can be clumsy, messy, and inefficient. So a beak wipe that looks dramatic in one context may be perfectly ordinary in another. A robin wiping purple juice off its bill after fruit is not giving you a stress signal. A chickadee rapidly taking seeds during a cold snap is not necessarily unusually fearful. A parent bird in breeding season may barely pause because it has somewhere else to be. One of the kindest things you can do as an observer is to let context speak before worry takes over. This is also where people often misread absence. Birds visiting only at certain hours or disappearing for a few days does not automatically mean your feeder has been rejected. Natural food shifts, weather, molt, predator activity, nesting demands, and neighborhood disturbance can all change how and when birds use a space. The beak wipe won't answer every question by itself, but it helps you read the moment more accurately. It tells you the bird is not just eating, it is processing the whole environment. There is one more place this tiny behavior can point you, and it matters more than many people realize. Windows. A bird often leaves the feeder, lands on a nearby perch, wipes its beak, scans, and then launches fast. If that launch line points toward reflective glass, especially glass mirroring sky or plants, the risk goes up. So pay attention to where the white perch is. If birds are using a railing or branch that sends them straight toward a window, that setup may need to change. The most effective window safety changes are practical, not decorative. Place feeders either very close to the glass, within a few feet, or much farther away, so high-speed collisions are less likely. Add dense exterior patterns, screens, cords, or other visible markers to break up reflections. One decal in the middle usually is not enough. If birds are feeding, wiping, launching, and you've had even near misses at the window, don't wait for a strike to take it seriously. Now, important distinction. Most beak wiping is normal. A few brisk wipes after feeding, especially after sticky or dusty food, is just bird housekeeping and tool maintenance. That is not something to panic about. What deserves closer attention is a different pattern. Repeated frantic rubbing on multiple surfaces without obvious feeding. Frequent face rubbing paired with crusty eyes, swelling around the bill, or lethargy. A bird that keeps working at its beak as if something is wrong. Several birds looking irritated around a dirty feeder. A bird that seems dazed after hitting glass and then rubs at the bill or face. Those are not cases to dismiss as cute quirks. If that happens, stay calm and observe. Check the food immediately. Remove anything wet, spoiled, or contaminated. Clean the feeder thoroughly, and clean the surrounding perches as well. If you've recently used sprays, adhesives, paint, or harsh cleaners near the area, consider residue. Birds investigate the world with their bills, and if an individual bird appears injured or impaired, contact a licensed wildlife rehabilitator rather than trying to handle it yourself unless you know what you're doing. So, what are the biggest takeaways you can actually use? First, give birds somewhere safe to finish a feeding visit. A feeder alone is not enough. Birds need a retreat perch where they can handle food, wipe, and scan. Second, keep the space predictable. Stable routes build confidence. Sudden layout changes, shiny new objects, and frequent feeder moves can make a familiar yard feel unfamiliar. Third, keep food and surfaces clean and dry. Watch for clumped seed, spoiled fruit, smeared suet, and dirty white perches. Normal beak wiping should not have to compete with a contaminated feeding station. Fourth, reduce crowding and conflict. More than one feeder, better spacing, and a little structural variety can lower pressure for shy or lower-ranking birds. Fifth, protect the exit routes. Windows and predators often become the real danger after the bird leaves the feeder, not while it's on it. And maybe the most important takeaway of all is this. Stop taking every hesitant bird behavior personally. That tiny wipe is not a review of your generosity. It is not a bird being dramatic. It is not ingratitude. It is often the finishing touch of survival. A wild animal has just gathered food in a risky place, cleaned the tool it depends on, checked its surroundings, and decided what to do next. Once you see that, even a 1-second movement becomes meaningful. Your garden is not just a place where birds come to eat. To them, it is a map of edges, escape routes, memory, pressure, opportunity, and trust. The branch they wipe on matters. The space between the feeder and the shrub matters. The window reflection matters. Your movement pattern matters. Cleanliness matters. Calm matters. And that is the beautiful part. You do not need to control birds to help them. You just need to read them a little better. The next time you see that tiny beak wipe, don't let it disappear into the background. Watch what came before it. Watch where it happens. Watch what happens next. That one small gesture can tell you whether the bird feels merely messy, briefly exposed, socially pressured, seasonally rushed, or quietly at ease. If you start noticing this in your own yard or balcony, tell me what species you saw and what the setup was. Did it wipe on the feeder, a branch, a railing, the same exact perch every time? Those details are where the story lives. And if you like looking deeper into ordinary backyard bird moments like this, subscribe, because the smallest movements are often the ones that reveal the most.